as read from the freshly typed speech. I know this looks long, but I figured I could put what I learned in 8th grade about writing argumentative paragraphs to use. One of the things I really looked forward to getting was the Sims 4 computer game. As of now, you seem to be against the idea due to the fact you can make the Sims have sex, called woohoo in the game. I can assure you it's okay for me to get it. This is how I began the speech I delivered to my parents the beginning of freshman year, right after my 15th birthday. I wanted the Sims video game, but they were against it, and I disagreed with the issues they brought up. But instead of yelling at them or just accepting what seemed like an unfair decision, I wrote them a speech. I used a mixture of online sources, pictures, and personal arguments to get them on my side. And guess what? It worked. My parents came to me the next day and admitted that while they had previously adamantly decided I wouldn't get the game, the points I made and the respectful delivery of my speech changed their minds. Thanks to them, my Sim families are alive and well to this day. While my speech was just a small example of rebellion, the tactics I use can be applied to rules or practices with much greater impacts. Teenagers are often shut down when they try to challenge something, and that suppression needs to stop. It was with the help of teenage rebellion that history has been made, history that might not have happened otherwise. By listening to us, adults pave the way for the next generation of leaders to share their solutions to challenges. Teenagers are people with voices that need to be heard, that will be heard if delivered properly. If adolescents learn to argue in a mature academic manner, authority figures are more likely to consider their points, giving teenagers greater success in making change. Since so many teenagers tend to butt heads with their parents, the home is a perfect place to practice mature argumentative skills. For most teens, the home is a relatively risk-free environment, as the worst thing that could happen is that they don't get what they want, like a later curfew or fewer chores. But I understand that some teenagers live in a house where arguing in any way could be unsafe. I'm lucky to not live in a house like that, but that also means I don't really know how to argue in that environment. I don't even know if I would advise it. What I do know about arguing with parents is to keep emotions in track. Allowing themselves to get frustrated and angry will make it easy for parents to write off the whole argument as an expression of teenage angst that can't be taken seriously. An argument doesn't have to be a bad thing. The literal definition is a reason or a set of reasons given with the aim of persuading others that an action or idea is right or wrong. Like mine did, parents can appreciate a calm, respectful conversation and, therefore, be more likely to consider their children's side, assuming they allow themselves to. How many of you out there remember your parents telling you to stop talking back at them, or that you were being disrespectful when you questioned one of their rules? I know I do. There are still times to this day when I have to beg my dad to explain a simple decision to me, with most of the answers I receive being a dismissive hand wave, loss of eye contact, and a hasty, just because. If parents never give their children freedom to question the world around them, how can they be expected to form their own opinions? I grew up being told my curiosity was a virtue and that I would need it as I grew up. But if asking questions was such a noble thing, why are children so often scolded for talking back? Sure, parents are probably right most of the time, especially when talking to a younger child, but it's not about being right. It's about being heard. By encouraging debate and discussion, parents allow their children to be heard. Now, speaking calmly and concisely may be how teens can change their home lives, but it will not be so easy in school. Students are bred to be compliant, to take orders and finish tasks without a second thought as to what they're doing and why. In all my years of being a student, I've only been asked to give feedback on my student experience once, back in middle school when a teacher gave out a survey to our class asking for our opinion of him and how he taught. I didn't have him again the following year, so I don't know if he applied our feedback or not. Since then, I haven't even heard of an outlet for us students to give our opinions on how classes are taught or which school rules could be tweaked. Schools are for students, so why are students not given the opportunity to weigh in on how they're taught? It's our job as the next generation of leaders to take matters into our own hands. Schools like to enforce rules, which is why the results of the Tinker versus Des Moines Act of 1969 could become the ace up teen sleeves. According to historian Dawson Barrett, as long as the form of expression does not materially and substantially disrupt the school's operations, students engaging in nonviolent protest are protected by law from punishment. Now, under the protection of the First Amendment, students can petition, strike, walk out, and perform any other peaceful form of rebellion in the event their schools do not respect their voices. I wish I'd known this in 7th grade. My teacher told me the signatures I was collecting from my classmates to help change dress code wouldn't ever find their way to the school board, and that I shouldn't continue. Being at the age where I thought adults could do no wrong, I obediently threw the paper in the recycle bin. I thought I'd get in trouble if I kept passing my paper around, but I now know that my teacher couldn't have stopped me if I did. Sometimes it's not a school or a parent making unfair or unjust decisions, but instead the teenager's church, neighborhood, workplace, favorite shopping center, or even their legislators. When that's the case, the authorities in those positions may not listen to a well-researched speech. As previously mentioned, I wanted to change the dress code in middle school. Girls could wear leggings that covered the whole leg under the skirts, or wear nothing, leaving the leg bare. Apparently, wearing leggings that expose an inch of ankle earned me 2 days of lunch detention. That illogical idea came from the closed mindset that will and has shut out the idea of reasoning with the opposite side. What history has proven is that closed minds will open with action. Protests, strikes, walkouts, and sit-ins have been greatly effective in getting laws changed, many of which events have been orchestrated by teenagers who were fed up with decisions being made for them and went out to do something about it. Though they should still be the first resort in an argument, sometimes words are not enough, as history has shown. In my teenage life, I've only been part of one protest, though there was an opportunity for more. There was a women's rights march last summer in my small town, and I wanted to go and support my cause. Understandably, my mother was aware of the potential for violence and would let me go, but I wasn't angry. I was able to contribute in a safer environment later in the year. In lieu of the Parkland shootings, my school participated in a 17-minute walkout. Despite the cold, I stood outside with many of my peers to not only honor those whose lives were lost, but to draw attention to legislation that, if implemented, could have prevented their deaths. We did receive backlash, but I am proud to have done something that could someday make a change. This is the kind of action that might find its way into a history book in the future. Authority figures hold the power to give teenagers freedom to share their revolutionary ideas. The strategies given in this paper will be the oil to the rusted gears and stubborn minds. This plan is not foolproof, but it works often enough to be deeply valuable. We have ideas, we have gumption, and we should not be afraid to stand up for things we believe are wrong. But if no one's around to hear the argument, did it really make any sound? I covered every possible issue my parents had with The Sims in my speech. I proved how mild woohooing was with pictures, gave quotes from the creator stating that he made the game for financial consciousness, and promised my parents that I felt I was mature enough to handle any mature themes The Sims might throw at me. This is not from my memory. I remember all this because I reread my speech, which my mom has kept all these years in her bedside drawer. I'm a graduating senior this year, just to put in perspective how long she's hung on to it, how long she's been proud of me, how long she's heard me.